All right, our presentation is on climate change, and more importantly, how does the world's media cover this topic? So, starting off, what is climate change? Climate change is Earth's unnatural change to its weather pattern, which has been scientifically proven to only be caused by humans and the vast amount of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. Um, Climate change can cause the following, but are not limited to air pollution, increase in natural disasters, melting glaciers, and heat waves. So now that we know what climate change is, we're going to evaluate how they are being covered through multiple media agencies throughout the world. These include the United States, CNN, Canada's The Globe and Mail, United Kingdom's The Sun, China, ECNS, and finally Brazil's Folha de Sao Paulo. All right. So our first climate issue is air pollution. Um, so first I'm gonna evaluate CNN. Out of all the articles, I found CNN the most informative and intriguing to read. They use a lot of scientific research to back up their claims. They didn't only focus on the U.S., and they provided many interesting facts, such as that air quality increased in 84% of countries in the world due to lockdowns.
Like fact to include because people are like, oh, like I remember.
Okay, next we have the Globe and Mail. Um, Pollution could be damaging your brain, researchers suggest. That was the article's title, and it was interesting to see not much articles written after 2018, only in relation to COVID-19. But besides this, they included eye-opening facts, such as 4.2 million deaths a year due to air pollution causing heart disease, stroke, lung cancers, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. I also found it interesting that they wrote an article on how we can improve air quality in our homes. I found it interesting because uh, I'm not sure if we have to go to that we should be going to that extent to try to improve our air quality. Next, we have the sun. Toxic smog, air pollution is more deadly than smoking, killing 8.8 million extra people a year. So I found the Sun to be very dramatic and with eye-catching titles in almost all their articles. They also speak of PM 2.5, which, although was mentioned in multiple articles, they really went in depth here in the Sun. Basically, PM 2.5 is air particles that have been linked to air pollution and has been sent to link to problems such as an increased risk of diabetes. Next, we have ECNS, which I really liked as it was very informative and factual. It spoke on both problems and solutions, which differ from agencies which only gave out problems. And they also spoke of a huge problem of air pollution in China. Finally, we have Folha de Sao Paulo, which really lacked on recent information on air pollution. So it made me question whether or not, or whether did they care about the topic, did they not believe in the problem, or is it just not an issue in their country maybe? So those are just a couple of questions that I was wondering with that news agencies. The next climate issue is natural disasters, such as hurricanes, floods, etc. First we have CNN, which, different to how I perceived them in the last climate issue, they were very dramatic in this approach. They says UN warns that world risks become an uninhabitable hell for millions unless leaders take climate action. So they said how there's a rise in natural disasters over the past 20 years with only climate change to blame it. Next we have the Globe, which also similar to CNN, was a little dramatic. They stated there's nothing natural about the disaster ravaging the earth. Also explaining things as like we have to take immediate action. And although they explained what we had to do, I feel like it was very wordy with very few scientific information. They also stated how U.S. wildfires, smog affect Canada, which I found interesting because it shows how even if we have problems in the U.S., it could affect other countries around the world. So climate change shouldn't be held down to, oh, this country should do this, or instead it should be as humans as a collaborative should come together to try to fix this issue. The Sun was also very dramatic and provided scary statistics. They spoke of multiple disasters that have direct correlation to climate change. One of those scary statistics were to even have a 50-50 chance of staying under the temperature, the world has to be carbon neutral by 2050. ECNS, like before, was very informative. They also spoke on multiple countries that have been impacted by disaster throughout the years, obviously due to climate change. Um, one one quote from Rover Glasser, which is a UN Secretary General Special Representative. He stressed that reducing greenhouse gases and adapting to climate change is vital for countries seeking to reduce disaster risk now and in the future. Finally, we have Fajo de Sao Paulo, which again was very limited in the information I could find. They didn't have a lot of articles talking about climate change, mostly in general, but they did have a couple on speaking on disasters caused in areas around the world.
So, another climate issue is melting glaciers. Um, First, I'm going to go over CNN. So, CNN, there was an article about a frozen rainforest of microscopic life is melting Greenland's ice sheet. So, it basically covered how there is microscopic organisms under the Greenland ice sheet that were contributing to it melting, but also climate change is melting it as well. It was a big factor. It's being accelerated by the climate crisis, is what they said. I thought that was very strong, maybe almost intimidating language that might discourage people from reading news like this, because when you think crisis, you think like, oh my gosh, like that's dangerous, like that's serious, which it is. But I feel like sometimes just the way that they put it in there, it didn't seem like it was there. It was like a scare tactic. That's what it seemed like. So they also stated that it was melting 7 times faster than it was in the 1990s, which I thought was very interesting. And it was a good like fact to include, because people are like, oh, like I remember the 90s. It was kind of like relatable. So I thought that was good. So moving on to the Globe and Mail. This one was about heat waves and melting glaciers and how they're kind of relating and sort of feeding into one another by the heat melting the glaciers and messing with ecosystems, because the glaciers then move and melt and there's too much water, obviously. I thought it was very informative. It was like the government, it was kind of like they were taking accountability and saying like how they were going to like maybe try and fix things or begin to go and fix things, and like what types of action they would be taking. So the Sun, this was another article. I don't know if it's just the culture or if it was just very dramatic, because the headline was melting Alaska glacier could unleash mega tsunami hundreds of feet tall this year. The this at the end of that was all in capitals. And I don't know if it was just like creative license or trying to get people to read it, trying to get people interested. And I sympathize with that, but I feel like it kind of made it into a joke almost. It just didn't seem very serious, and it's obviously a very serious topic, talking about melting glaciers. But overall, the article did cover information very well. I thought it was informative. So yeah, and then moving on to ECNS, it gave enough information about what the local people surrounding were like dealing with and given the issues, and how the government was helping reduce melting glaciers, or like working towards that at least, which was good. And then Folha de Sao Paulo, it went over how there are melting glaciers and what was happening, but I feel like it could have been more informative, a little bit more personable for like the government. Like, how was the government going to change? How is it going to like work on this? Moving on to heat waves, which is the second climate issue I'm going to be discussing. CNN didn't really talk about money this time, but they did mention an oil spill in one of the articles that I read. And I felt like more so it was, again, focusing on like how it's going to benefit America. And I don't know, it just didn't seem very like diverse. And then the Globe and Mail, they had decent coverage because, okay, so the last one was kind of like heat waves and melting glaciers. So overall, they did do decent climate issue coverage. They asked for the opinions of experts, and they actually put the issues into a perspective of what they know to be factual. So they listened to the experts, and it kind of seemed like they were taking it very seriously. and they were showing how the government was maybe going to start changing or working on it. And then The Sun, it describes, it was kind of the same. It was describing enough information, but it was a little, I don't know, it felt very informal. I don't know if it's just that site, but it felt very informal. But it was good. And then ECNS for the heat waves, they gave lots of facts and other information on heat waves and how it's affecting Earth. Not really too specific to their area or really any area, just more general. And then Folha de Sao Paulo for the heat waves was realistic, more interviewing experts with statistics on climate change and forest fires than like actual information as to what their government is doing about the issue, which I think is important for media, like to show how it's affecting you, but also the people around you. So overall, I thought the coverage for all of these media sites was decent compared to what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was not going to be informative at all. That's just my personal opinion. Each source provided information. I think it was enough, but like I think we need to be focusing more, and all media outlets need to be focusing more on how individuals can help with climate change, but also more so how we can better hold corporations and people majorly contributing to greenhouse gases accountable, because that is like the biggest source of climate change is the greenhouse gas emissions. And in recent years, climate change has gained popularity in the media due to the severity of the climate. But also, climate change is politicized in American media specifically. Many people don't take it seriously. I don't know if it's because a politician they don't like supports climate change and taking action against climate change, or because it's just a political topic because it's discussed as like a debate. But something like this should not be political. It shouldn't be something that people don't want to hear about or shouldn't be passionate about, because when you hear about climate change, you should be passionate about it. You should be like, oh, I know like how, like what's going on in the world and how people are changing and how I'm trying to change it. I think overall media, it needs to hold people more accountable. It needs to hold governments more accountable. And although these articles were not bad, it doesn't take climate change as seriously as it should be, or we would have had more of a change in our climate, for the better at this point. I think changing the dialogue from how can we profit from climate change into what do we need to improve the quality of the planet we live on. So like how can we work towards changing the climate for the better instead of, well, how can we profit from it? Because climate change isn't necessarily going to be a profitable thing. It's actually going to lose us money, like that one CNN article said. It's going to put us in debt because it's going to absolutely ruin the entire earth if we don't start taking action now. So that kind of a mindset would be a major first step into taking climate change seriously, especially through media. Thank you.